That's amazing. I mean, you talk about these big ideas. Okay, Danny's got this big idea. And actually, I'm going to zoom in a little bit first because, you know, out of the first film, you had the story of the collector, which you guys pulled into this now. You know, how do you talk, can you talk a little bit about how you built upon that existing story?
Yeah, well, with the collector, I mean, we did a lot of research, you know, with the through the comics, through the ages, and of course he's in the first film in that tag at the end of Thor: The Dark World, and so we had a lot of content to take a look at the collector, and it's funny, in a linear story like the film, you know, he services a plot. He gets the Guardians from A to B. They learn about the Infinity Stone. They move on. So there wasn't too much to build upon up there. But what was cool was the planet Nowhere. When we dug deep, when we talked to our partners, Dave and Brian, we found out that Taneleer Tavon owns a mining company called the Tavon Group. And that triangle with that down arrow that you see on our building, on the trash cans, and our cast costume everywhere, that was featured in the background of the film. It was just a logo they had as set dressing. But we build upon that to say, hey, the collector has this mining colony. They mine the organic matter from this severed head that is the planet Nowhere. And they use that to sell it on the black market. And then we build upon that story saying that's how he makes his money to afford his amazing collection. Because he's offering millions of units for all these amazing artifacts. So that idea of the organic matter, the spinal fluid, which I hope all of you had a taste tonight, because they're
delicious.
All of you. It's delicious, yeah. Right? Yesterday they had it with alcohol, which is even more amazing, I must tell you. So taking that story, and then, you know, we want this building to be surging with energy. We thought, well, if you go in our maintenance space scene, you'll see that surge of energy that's from that spinal fluid. That's what's powering that generator that we later on have to go and help rockets shut down.
Incredible. It's always wonderful to hear sort of how you take that initial storyline and weave it into the attraction and pull it through. Steph, you know, we've got a storyline now. You know, the concept established. You know, how do you pull it all together? How do you actually, you know, John's helped assemble a team, Danny's helped the story. You know, we started with the big concept, Marvel team's on board. Now what do we do to push it forward? What do you do to push it forward?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, yeah, you have that high concept, but now you need to start turning it into something more, getting into more of that detail level of how are you telling the story? I mean, we try to kind of push things along, co-develop things, and you'll end up to a place where like one thing will inform another. So, you know, how are we designing the interior space of the lobby may inform how we're, you know, going to convey the story, and other pieces as well. But so one thing we knew we had to get to, which Amy will talk about, is a shoot. So as we're saying, like, okay, so how are we going to tell this story? It starts with the script and storyboards and concept art. So we'll create, you know, kind of like that idea of these guys are hanging in this tower, right? Mm-hmm. This tall fortress building. They're over an abyss. You know, this is where the collectors trap them because they are so good at escaping. He knows they're good at escaping, so he's going to create like the most powerful prison for them to be in. So that was kind of where we took that. But in addition to that, we were also doing, we use technology in different ways as well. So we might build models. We'll build them physically. So like in the case of the exterior, we built a physical model to study that. And digitally as well. So we could actually like put on a VR headset and walk through the queue and start to get a sense of all the different pieces coming together. Or even like virtually ride the ride. So we could understand how those different story pieces are coming together. Is it being conveyed? You know, kind of like show it to different folks and get feedback, you know, from our different partners and start to develop that story further.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you touched on something, Amy. I wanted to come over to you and talk a little bit about the collaboration between, you know, how did it work? The collaboration between WDI and the Marvel Studios. I mean,
so we're already obviously collaborating creatively, and I've known Victoria a very long time, and she sort of glanced on that, how long she's been working in visual effects, and they were already shooting Guardians of the Galaxy, right? And so I longed for Victoria's crew. We had a really ambitious schedule. We had a really ambitious set of stunts. We had a really ambitious set of visual effects that we were going to do. And so we asked for help. And so they came with their crew, came with their director, they came with their passion, they came with so many things that really helped us to obviously produce this amazing attraction. We also had a shoot where we were flying really fast by these characters, and they had to have all their like quirky relationships while we were shooting. So, you know, having James direct the talent was really important to us. And so,
Right.
right? And so we called and asked for help, and here we are. They're still helping. Which was really, really quite incredible.
Yeah, it came together in you know, between our schedule constraints. I was amazed at the way the world sort of aligned, you know, for all of us. And I think we've got some behind-the-scenes footage. Oh yeah, we can roll.
Is this part of the tour? Can't you fanboys leave me alone?
Action.
Me, I'm in near mint condition.
Clearly they didn't have fun working. Well, Steve, this brings us to the written word.
You have to touch on that scene, though. You have to touch on that take.
Well, what was it like? First, really, what was it like writing for this cast?
I got to hear Stan Lee say words that I wrote, so I was in heaven. That was like amazing. And yeah, well, Chris was just he literally threw himself into every take and just, you know, gave us 100% all day. I mean, everything. I you know, I've never worked with an A-list cast that was so enthusiastic to be doing, you know, a project for our theme park. I still remember, you know, Chris Pratt standing in a glass case at one point during the shoot and just talking to the other, I'll just call them the other Guardians, and just saying, dudes, we're going to be in a Disney ride at California Adventure. It's awesome. I mean, he's just like his character, and so they were a joy to work with. And then, you know, getting to work with Benicio del Toro and then Bradley Cooper coming in. It was just, you know, it was a dream project. It really was.
Yeah, it was terrific. Bradley's voiceover sessions.
Oh,
were
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
But wait a minute, before I go away from writing,
Yeah.
writing scripts isn't the only thing a writer does on our shows.
That's true. So yesterday I was asked a lot, so what does a writer do with Imagineering? To which I answer, the animatronics don't make up their own words. They really don't. So we, besides the scripting, we, you know, everything is story with us. So every little bit, from the plaques in the cases to the marquee, is about telling the story.
Yeah, but go a little deeper on the marquee.
Yes,
Talk about what we're seeing.
Yeah, so this is, you know, a funny story. So, you know, we came up with the title, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, and it looked great, and they designed the logo, and, you know, fantastic. And then when we got to the marquee, we're like, wait a second, in the story, Rocket has broken free, and he's come out and he's graffitied the sign, and which is great. But the word mission was already designed. The mission was all like typeset. It was like, wait a second, the collector wouldn't have put Guardians of the Galaxy mission on a sign and then Rocket would have written Breakout. So what can we do that would be logical for the story? So we came up with the notion that, well, what if on the sign, the collector had said, you know, first time on display. And then Rocket, being Rocket, ripped off some of the letters and put on mission, and then have enough letters and spray painted Breakout. So it tells.
You've been staring
I'm just
at
going to stand by the sign all day and tell the story so people get it.
Every one of them's going back and taking a photo with that tonight. I'm sure.
But it infuses the story to the point where the designer then, the graphics people who did the sign, they put on mission in a way that wasn't perfectly straight. It was haphazard the way Rocket would have done it in a hurry. So it's all, it tells the whole story. So that's
And now you know why we need the writers.
Exactly. Of course, of course. Brian, we've seen some images already. You know, we've seen the Guardians themselves. You know, what about? There's some other supporting characters in the attraction.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you use the term supporting players or supporting characters. It's actually interesting. One of the things that Joe drilled into our heads at the very beginning of this project, and I don't think it's unique to this project, I think it's just great theme park design and philosophy, is that the story, even though it's called Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, the story isn't really about them. The protagonist of the story is the guest and what they're going through. And every character in that story is in support of whatever your experience is. Think about whatever attraction you go on, it's about you. And it's about what you're experiencing on that attraction. So even the Guardians themselves are supporting players, but I don't think that's what you're referring to.
No, that's not what I was inferring to.
I mean, we had a blast. The queue in particular, I think is where us at Marvel, we really get to sink our teeth into diving deep into the lore, like Danny mentioned. These characters have been around for decades, and characters like Cosmo and Ultron who make brief appearances, but I think there's so many Easter eggs that if you're familiar with the films, if you're familiar with the comics, you're familiar with TV, there's things in there that have been brought to life for the first time. There may be an Asgardian Warhammer in there for you fanboys who might know what that might look like. Yeah. But there's so many great things, and that was part of the fun for us in creating this, and even the stuff that's hanging up above. I think Danny sent us a list one time, or it was actually just a PDF of all the images of everything up above.
Really?
Yeah, and he's like, can you guys at Marvel just like name these? We're like, yeah, that's gonna be awesome. So we looked at everything and thought about what does this kind of look like? What planet might it come from? What might the story be? Some of them are new planets that we made up. Some are taken right from the pages of the comics or from the films. But each and every one of those things is named and given a lot of thought into. And so that's kind of the fun is, if you don't know it, if you don't learn those things, that's okay. But if you want to dive a little deeper and learn a little bit more, there's plenty there for the fans.
Just scratch that surface.
Yeah, totally.
Find more.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I'm going to say, I'm sorry,
Sure.
I'm inspired to say this because we were doing a thing earlier, and to Brian's point, one of the people that came through had already gone online. And this is the fun part about the Marvel Universe and the Disney Universe coming together, is he already researched every profile, and he knew, and he went through and he blew Danny's mind. He was, okay, I already found this one, and I found that one. And I was standing there going, that is what it's so awesome about it, to Brian's point. It's like, you can go deeper or you can not.
It's accessible, and you can stay on the surface, but the super fans are going to come in and really have a blast.
Yeah. And we're going to make new fans out of those who are. One of the things we talked about a lot yesterday is this attraction okay for people who know nothing about the Guardians? And I think that's what Joe was saying about starting with zero. We can hold your hand through this and teach you about who each and every one of them are and what their personalities are like. And then hopefully make new fans, and then you go and revisit the films, and then hopefully dive a little deeper and read some comics and watch some animation, and it's all one big cyclical universe that we're creating.
One big happy family.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? One other thing I want to mention.
Yeah.
There are nods in this attraction to other things that we are doing around the world.
No.
Yeah. In true Marvel fashion, hashtag it's all connected. There are nods to the Iron Man experience in Hong Kong. There are nods to the Marvel Superhero Academy on the Disney cruise ship. It's all connected, guys. And so we encourage you to be good fans and go on the interwebs and find all the clues and connect it all. That's the fun. It's all part of the same universe.
That's pretty cool.
And we're just getting started.
And this is just scratching the surface, like we said earlier. Exactly. Hey, Danny, we were talking about, in talking and looking at the collection, you show up as the art director, you've got this vast, catalog of artifacts from the collector. How do you decide, what's on display, what actually ended up in the collection?
Well, I have to start by saying one of those objects that are overhead was designed by Joe, the mummy. You handmade that mummy, and then Marvel named it the gardening gnome from Asgard, which I just thought was brilliant.
You're welcome. You're an official Asgardian, Joe.
So as Brian had touched upon, we wanted to make sure there was something for everyone. That if you're a fan of the films, we have you covered. If you're a fan of the comics, we have you covered. If you're a fan of theme parks, we have you covered, because Collector's Fortress has landed here at Disney California Adventure, right? So hey, he's a collector at Disneyland too, I guess, right? And actually, there's so many different fun nods that we threw into every single scene. I'll give you some examples. If look closely on the collector's desk in the lobby video. Okay, there's some really fun references there. Look throughout his office, every inch of it. There's always funny things to discover. I will tell you, there is a severed head of a Small World doll. So something creepy, something the collector right? Yeah, so there's some amazing things, and our partnership, the studios team gave us authentic film props, we always say it's in story, so it always works in story for us. But it's pretty cool to feature things that you might recognize from the Sanctum Sanctorum, from Asgard, from the world of Guardians of the Galaxy. And we're hoping that those will constantly be swapped out, that exhibition in the very first scene is always constantly rotating space. And then again, we have some great references to the comics. Someone spotted Dolores the Octopus from Country Bear Vacation Hoedown. Anyone else a fan? Other than me?
Yeah.
Anyone else remember
So
Dolores?
Disney park fans have some things in there too.
Yes,
That's what
yes,
you're saying.
we have a lot of great stuff. One of my favorite stories, Kevin Feige walked the attraction last week, and he spent a lot of time in the office, like looking at every little detail. And he was staring at the collector's desk, and everyone was gathered around him. What are you looking at? What is that? And he goes, dude, that's an Alien Encounter reference right there. And I'm like, that is awesome. Kevin Feige's such a huge theme park fan. He doesn't get any better than that.
Just didn't miss it at all. Went right to it.
Went right to it. Got it right away.
I love it. Joe, I wanted to come back to you because I wanted to talk about the exterior. You hit a little bit on the exterior of the building. Can you talk a little bit more about the actual design of the exterior of the building?
Well, there's a challenge because, so there's a challenge. We're trying to tell a story about the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a film, Guardians of the Galaxy. There's an art direction look in the film, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Then there's a building that we're starting from that doesn't necessarily look like any of the art direction from Guardians of the Galaxy, but can be made to look like something, right? So you've got two things you're doing. One is you have to give the building the character of the character. Remember, our buildings are not sets. When I started out as a set designer, when you design a set, you are deliberately designing an environment that will sit behind someone so they can perform. Right? It's a bad set if the detail is jumping forward and commanding attention when the actor is trying to perform.
Mm-hmm.
These are not sets. These are characters. They are characters. They step forward so you can read them really clearly, so they speak to you really clearly. So they are much bolder than a set would be.
Right.
They're way too attention-grabbing for a set. So part of it has to be that. We talked about the form language and all that stuff.
Right.
Just to step forward and declare the character of the character. Then you have the second thing of stylistically, how do I solve the problem that I basically have a large planar object? How am I going to get this sense of the world we're trying to get with this big planar object? So remember, we can draw not only from the world of film, but from the world of comics, from the entire Marvel universe for our inspiration. So in this case, we went back to really a classic Marvel artist, Jack Kirby, who is one of the first people to really develop complex technological patterning in the comics, and said, look, here's a guy working in a planar medium, conveying the sense of technology with these huge graphic planar designs. If we start there, start with that and dimensionalize that, we're starting from something that works in 2 dimensions. All we have to do is pull out as much dimension as we can with what we have, and we'll have something that feels like it came from that world. Because it did. It came from one of the origin people of this world.
Exactly.
Not necessarily the world, the entire world, right? And we can get something that feels right, right? And it expresses the character, but it doesn't have to be a copy of a famous thing you saw in a film.
Yeah, you had to sort of establish its own identity here for, for the place and, the story we were telling here at this location. We've been talking a lot about visuals, Danny, but in the queue line, and we have some auditory, we have some oral Easter eggs. Can you tell us a little about what's going on in the queue line?
Yeah,
Sound?
you bet. Audio design is one of the best parts of working on an attraction like this, and for our
I
exterior.
agree completely, yes.
That was for you, John. I love you. I don't know why I said that.
Don't make it awkward.
Too late. So for our exterior cue, we wanted, instead of having a typical background music loop where usually we have a kind of just an ambiance. We really wanted to do something in story. So, and to start telling the story of the collector, and that he's a collector of many things. One of the things you see visually is his garden collection. We call it the Gardens of the Galaxy. Thank you, Steve Spiegel, for that one.
And Master Steve Spiegel.
There you go.
Yes.
But then we wanted you to hear the collector's vast music collection, audio collection, just sound bites, audio cues, things that he's collected from all over the galaxy. And that was another opportunity to pepper in some very familiar and funny items in there. So the way we have it set is Afeta, who's the collector's assistant. She sets up each clip by saying this is catalog number 1401. And then we play the clip, and just a little snippet of it. And some of the things you might recognize. For example, the collector in his collection has the Voyager space shuttle, spacecraft, and he has some of the recordings from the golden disc he found inside. So see if you guys can pick out what those are in that audio loop. Another one I want to talk about is the exit hall. So usually at the end of an attraction, you're pumped, you're jazzed, you just got off the attraction, and you're rushing through that exit hall. You're heading into the warehouse space. But we want to do something really special. We want to keep you amped up. So we played the awesome mixtape from both Volume 1 and Volume 2 in there. So you continue that kind of, that excitement as you're exiting out. But to make it even more special, because at that point of the attraction, the Guardians are loose. We're making our escape through the warehouse, and the collector has no idea what's going on. So he comes over the PA system and he's saying, "Where are my collectibles? Who's playing that obnoxious music? Turn it off." And really funny, Benicio really got into the performance of that, which was a lot of fun. And again, in the spirit of kind of peppering another layer on top of that, if you stick around the exit hall, which many of us don't, but if you stick around, you might hear some other familiar character voices in there too. Some really, really fun cameos, maybe a specific duck.
Oh.
That's not Donald. The other duck.
Well, now you're giving it away, but okay. There's another duck. Daisy, of course.
Of course, of course.
Within all of our attractions, one thing we haven't talked about tonight at all, and Steve, I'm going to direct this at you, is our cast members.
Yes.
We actually had an interesting opportunity in this attraction to engage our cast members in a different way and sort of bring them into the story. I mean, here we see some examples visually, the costume design. Talk a little bit about how you engage the cast members there.
Yeah, it all goes, it's story. We want, we want your part of the story when you walk in, and we want the cast members to be part of the story too. We want to give them what we call a role in the show, and really, because the more that we give them, they give back, in their performances, and it just makes the whole experience richer and better. So for this, we really wanted them to, we really sort of built in the fact, like, okay, you work for the collector. He's this horrible boss. You at any moment you could be, if you do the wrong thing, you're going to get put in a vitrine, into a glass case yourself.
You're going to join the collection.
Yeah, you could be part of the collection. So it gives them a reason to want to help us, want us to get the Guardians out. They're in on it. But they're a little nervous because there's cameras everywhere, and the collector might see them. So it's always it's a little bit on the sly that they're and you'll see that, and they're having so much fun with it. And the costumes, it really is like, you know, it's all part of the universe, that they fit into it. And we're hearing just a lot of great feedback from the actors, from the cast members.
And the cast members are really getting into it. That's what I'm.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely. Costumes are badass, that's why, right? Look at that. That is awesome.
That's terrific.
I want to wear that.
Well, and one of our other things, you know, Steph, we talk about, you know, cast members and how they're drilling us into the story and becoming part of it. But one of the things that was different, you know, here as we enter into the collection is we got that video in the pre-show area. You know, how did, you know, what was some of the decisions behind that? How did you go about, you know, deciding, hey, look, this is what we need here?
Yeah. Well, we knew early on, so we had that idea, right? The collectors captured the Guardians, and it's going to be a breakout. We're going to help them break out. And there ends up being several things that you have to just set up. You have to set up that they're trapped, and then that Rocket escapes, and then that you need to help Rocket. And so there's this sort of, as we were kind of coming up with these concepts early on, this realization that we needed sort of those separate kind of story beats in the experience to go through. And also, the other thing, which I think Joe mentioned, is just the idea that not everybody needs to know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are to experience this attraction. So in that first scene, you get the sense of like, okay, I get that this guy's the collector, and he doesn't seem to be like a very nice guy. And the Guardians are trapped, and I think they're nice people, and so like we should be able to want to help them. So that way when we go into the office and Rocket recruits us, we want to help out. We do want to help out. Yeah, so that was the big reason behind that.
Any little Easter eggs or any details we should be looking for in the videos?
Oh yeah, well actually everywhere. Like I think Danny mentioned a couple, both in the office and the first exhibit hall, but also on the ride too. There's so much content to see. I mean, as people come back and ride again and again, you'll see different creatures playing out different stories. Even if you see them in different vignettes, you'll see these creatures from around the universe kind of with their own, dealing with their own, you know, issues along the way.
Their own version of what's happening in this building.
Yes.
John, one of the interesting things that obviously had to be developed kind of ground up for the attraction was Rocket. You know, first of all, how did the team decide to end up with an AA figure of Rocket, and how did we get Rocket into the attraction? And talk a little bit about some of the challenges behind doing that.
Yeah, first of all, it's hard to compete with that too, playing with that. But
what's that? What are we looking at?
There's an animatic of Rocket. It's one of the tools we use to help us develop the performance, how it's going to look in the space. But early on, I think, you know, it goes to what Joe was saying too, of just understanding the story and what we're trying to do. And I think Guardians are relevant in our world, in a real world, or heroes are too, and they need to be brought into 3 dimensions to really make it feel real and want to connect with it. Right. That's really the essence of it. And in this effort again to raise the bar and produce an attraction that our guests would love. Hopefully they love Rocket. We thought this was really an important piece, an important element to that, and a way to really surprise guests. We've really been trying really hard to keep this one as secret as we could for as long as we could. I think we actually did a pretty good job. So we thought this was a great surprise. People who are familiar with the old attraction would think, oh, this is the old library, and you know, there's just a little TV on the wall, and so you watch people now, it's like, wow, it's Rocket. So the big challenge was, how do we get this complicated figure built? I know our poor animation folks were wondering, how do I get mechanics in that tiny little wrist?
Right.
So the challenges that went along with that were enormous. And then of course, from my perspective, it's wait, we're gonna do this whole thing in a year? We're gonna build that complicated figure? So we certainly put that challenge out to the team. And again, with these tools like this, it starts with storyboarding and a story.
Right, yeah, you
getting a
see the
script.
storyboard on the top left. That was sort of one of the early concepts about how to bring Rocket in. Then visual animatic that got developed.
Right.
Over there's a still.
And then they literally take that information from the animatic, and it literally just transfers right to the performance when we put it into.
Also, typically, we would design and build this, but we just built it. They just started building it. As soon as we had the momentum to go, they literally just built it. I've never seen anything like it. You know, we had a figure, we had the robotics in a very short period of time, because there was no other period of like, let's draw, let's do, that was gone.
Do you think that got jump-started because we had the existing character? You know, we had Rocket from the feature film. He's sort of like a prototype, the shape, yeah.
But there's also that expectation, right? You know what it looks like, so there's an expectation that it better look just like the rocket I see, right? So that's a big challenge. So
I don't know, did they deliver on the challenge?
the team did a great job. Really phenomenal job.
Joe, you chimed in, so I wanted to come back to you. We didn't just create one ride experience. How many different ride experiences did we create?
There are 6 rides, and then 6 profiles. Then there, of course, are the 6 songs that go with the 6 profiles, and then there are the tumbling assortment of scenes that are shuffled through those to create the rides that we have. The issue with the songs, which was really interesting, was how few songs really work with the ride, because I was saying this in the earlier panel as well. When you're riding this, the first thing we did was play the music and ride the old profiles. And even with the old profiles, you're just sitting there going, oh, for crying out loud, let's go, let's go, let's go, come on, we gotta go. So the music pushes the intensity of it, makes you want to go fast, makes you want to do more. And then once you set the ride to do more, then suddenly you find there's only like, I mean, I don't know how many, we went through so many songs.
We started on paper, we started with several hundred songs.
You had to ride the songs to figure out whether they would work or not, because it was all about what it felt like.
Quickly learned a vocabulary about ride experience against, you know, the energy of the music, and Joe's exactly right. There were some we were just like, next. We weren't even halfway through. It's like you just knew it wasn't going to work.
And we have, of course, all the original composition.
Right, something we thought would work, and then we're like, oh, wait, that didn't work.
Yeah, there was a lot of learning about what worked and what didn't work.
Like Magic Carpenter, I thought that would be great, and then it has that weird long bridge. It's like, oh, for crying out loud, shut up. And I think he said that
exactly
while we were riding.
Yeah. He would turn around and look at you guys playing.
No, I would. I would get very critical of, like, you know, whatever we would be riding. And like, oh, this is, oh, yawn, crickets, go, go, go.
And you got to remember, this is all happening after hours because the attraction's still working. So this is us. Of course, we're all, time is precious. You know, we're riding at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, we're all a little pointed by that point. It's like, yeah, no, it's not working, move on. Well, and one of the other parts, you know, I feel very fortunate is there's underscore, there's original music in the attraction. We brought on a great partner in Tyler Bates. Tyler Bates is the composer who wrote the music on both Guardians of the Galaxy feature films. And we weren't sure if he was going to want to join the party because they're working on our attractions a little bit different. But Tyler was a great sport and actually got into it a whole lot and really enjoyed working with us. And I can see future collaborations with Tyler. He really enjoyed it and scored all the music for the Collector and sort of helped set the tone of the Collector. You know, as we got into the pre-show area. I want to go a little bit further. I'm going to switch gears back to visuals. Amy, I'm going to come back to you. You know, to say the visual world we created for the attraction is unique is a bit of an understatement. But we're going to have some video playing behind you, talking about how do you capture, you know, how do you create visual media for a moving ride vehicle and not make us sick?
It's a really good question, John. So
I think
as
I
you
can watch
see,
that.
So meanwhile, they're doing this ride thing where they're just trying to figure out what song and what ride, and we want to give them all the ability to continue to finesse this ride and song. Meanwhile, the Guardians of the Galaxy #2 is being shot, and we have to shoot. We have to shoot. We have to shoot. And really the goal of all of the use of technology is to have it disappear. So you guys have an amazing guest experience where the technology really, it disappears. And so we got this really huge multi-camera array so that we could move up and down, we could reshoot this big photograph. And to give these guys the ability to just continue to finesse the ride and to get the amazing profiles that we did with the amazing music that we did. And I think that you can see that we are rocking and rolling on these our performers, because we really want to focus on the performance. So we have to recreate the space that the performers are in. And so I think that that's we're really successful in making well, it's not a movie, right? It has to be there. We are there with Rocket.
You're shooting the place.
Right, we are shooting a place.
Yes.
And that is the goal of this. And I think that making the film and technology disappear was the goal. And I think that we did an okay job at just focusing on the character performances and the great music and ride. So
Yeah.
you can see a little bit
I would
about how we
say you
did that.
definitely did. Those character performances. I actually think we have an animatic too.
Yeah.
This is one of the tools we got to watch. Here's Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Here's what we got to watch as we were developing the visual media.
My dear friends, this is the moment you have been waiting for.
Yeah! When Rocket unplugs you and starts things rocking! Now show me those hands, people! You got clearance, let's roll! Okay, I got control of this thing. You should see your faces! Let's try this sucker and open those cages! Okay, blowing all the controls not clearly thought through. That's right! Run away! Oh, crap! Okay, I got control of it.
So you can see a little bit of how we shot that. That's the blue screen shot, and then a little bit of the animatic that you see, and then you guys have all seen the final imagery. So hopefully it sort of disappears and you feel like you're there.
Felt pretty seamless when you guys wrote. Yeah. Well done, well done. I'm going to come back to you, Brian. We haven't talked in a little while. Let's talk about. You know what? We talked about collaboration earlier, but I want to hear more about the Marvel side. How do you or the whole Marvel team, how do you guys support the design process? For the parks, how do you guys support that at the Marvel Studios?
Well, I mean, the Imagineers have been super inclusive of of us throughout this entire process from day one. It was never them working in a bubble, isolated, and coming up with a thing, going, here it is, what do you think, we're done. We were included from day one, and so we broke the story together, we developed, we iterated, we debated, we argued, we did all of those things that are part of the creative process, and so, what we're trying to do at Marvel is just help support them and give them all the tools that they need to be informed about who the characters are, what the relationships are, how dive as deep as they want to go with all that information. And then we're looking at everything from day one up until the release of the attraction, looking at marketing images, providing them with assets, anything we can do. I think some of my happiest days are kind of in the middle when we were developing Cosmo for the cube. Danny starts sending me texts of the evolution of Cosmo. What do you think? How is this looking? And I've only had this feeling a few times in my life. And it was one of those moments where it hit me that as a longtime fan and comic book guy, Cosmo, the telepathic Russian space dog, is real. And I felt that way when I saw the movie, and I felt that way when he was sending me these texts. It was like, this is happening. This is awesome. And when we saw Rocket as an animatronic figure, there aren't enough happy face emojis on the planet to express how we felt seeing that kind of stuff. So we are just so happy to collaborate and work with them and provide them whatever they need to be successful in bringing these characters to life. And so it really has been a true collaboration.
Yeah, completely agree. And Dave, we talked a little bit about this too backstage. And I'm going to read this question because I kind of wrote it up as we were talking. You know, just like the Guardians, when individuals unite, the shared creativity and inspiration results in a bigger collaborative opportunity. You actually had some actionable stuff come out of that collaborative, relationship.
Yeah, I mean, to Brian's point, and I think my favorite part of this whole process has been the collaboration and the sort of magic of what Disney is, which is all these amazing arms of creative people and creative divisions, and you've got studios, and you've got the Imagineers, and you've got parks, and you've got all these things working together like no other place on the planet.
Right.
And that type of collaboration allows for some really amazing things. And this image, for anyone who's seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, might recognize it, might not. But I had the unique opportunity to go to my first R&D open house this year, and that place, I'm gonna get kicked off the stage if I tell you guys too much, but like the things that they're developing in that building from an innovative story entertainment standpoint, like what John was saying about, and Joe was saying about just building Rocket, like the things that they build, you're like, this is like amazing, right? And you're gonna tell a story with that. And anyways, the fun story for me, my favorite sort of moment of that collaborative process was, we were over there for the R&D open house, me and Kevin and Jonathan Schwartz, who was the producer of the film, and a few other people, and we were seeing all this amazing stuff. And I got to see these cool creatures and these cool characters, and we're all obviously all about character at Marvel and personality, and they got such a unique personality. And I remember going, these guys are so cool. And then I think John saw them, and a few other people saw them, and everyone was kind of talking about them. And I told Kevin about it, and then someone told James about it, and Joe talked to James, and there was a meeting, I remember one night, where we were all standing in the R&D building, and James is there, and he's seeing these creatures that were part of another thing. And he's like, cool, let's put them in the movie. And everyone was like, okay. And they
Just like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally like, let's put them in the movie. And instantly, I'll never forget that, was we're standing there, and I was looking at John, and I'm going, I bet they're gonna say Bearheart. They're gonna say Bearheart. And James goes, we'll put him on Bearheart. And because it was just kind of a unique place in the film that sort of felt natural, I think, to James, obviously. But those types of magic moments and those types of storytelling possibilities made possible by all of that is amazing. And they shipped over the 3D models of them, and Victoria worked with Amy's team, the visual development team at the studio, recolored them, and James gave them his touches. And you watch the movie, and they're in there, and that's like the characters. It's awesome.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, I know time's running late, and I think you guys might want to venture back out into the theme park, so we're going to turn the corner and start bringing it home. I got one question for all panelists, and it's just a brief question, because you all know it. What's your favorite part of Mission Breakout? And what Guardian are you most like? Start here at this end and work my way down. Brian.
All right, my favorite part of the attraction has got to be the music. I think it's become it's so intrinsic to how we think of Guardians of the Galaxy now.
Right.
And so having that music just changes tonally the experience. People are dancing. I just wrote it a few times with my kids, and the Jackson 5 song came on, and everyone's losing their minds. I'm like, this is fantastic. So I would say that's my favorite part. As for the character I'm most like, as a kid of the 80s, if I could turn myself into a giant Pac-Man, I gotta say,
there you go.
I gotta go with Star-Lord, Peter Quill.
Star-Lord. Dave.
I would say my favorite part of the ride, this is like the biggest Homer answer of all time, but it's totally true. I love so many rides at Disneyland, and I've had a couple that were my favorites forever. The first time I got off this, when we rode it like almost done, I was like, cool. right? Because you miss something, there's an Easter egg. Oh, what song did I get? Cool, I love that song. Cool. I got the line, Rocket. My favorite line is the Rocket line, the Disneyland. That's story inaccurate. You know, those types of things. But it's really the whole thing. I want to get off, I want to get right back on. It's unbelievable. If I had to pick a character, I would pick the Grandmaster, but I'm not like him at all. But if I had to pick one to be, I would be the Grandmaster.
Yeah.
Woo! Just the hair.
I was thinking, I think my favorite thing about the attraction is just the unpredictability. Like the number of times that I've ridden, I've like literally lost count. Like between the overnight rides, the test rides, the install, like anytime you change something, you gotta go ride it. Or like, oh my gosh, we put this box here, does it block Baby Groot? I don't know, okay, we gotta ride it. So like we've just ridden so many times, like over 200, I don't know, 300 times. And I still don't know what's going to happen when I ride it. I still get surprised by like, oh, we're going up now, oh, we're dropping. I don't know.
We rode it earlier tonight, yes, exactly.
And I still scream. So it's a ride that just makes you giggle. You just
right.
have fun, you just laugh, and that's my favorite part. For my character, I would go with Baby Groot because I like to dance and eat sweets.
That's awesome.
But really because I admire him. I think he's a really cool guy.
That's awesome. Danny.
Well, this is kind of a cop-out, but I really like the characters. I think the fact that, you know, we have characters from the first film, the second film, from the comics, you know, Mantis even. It's just, it's really cool to see them all come together. And because this is the Galactic Premiere Party, I brought some extra audio.
What?
Yes, I brought some just, some deleted scenes, I guess you could call them, deleted audio scenes. So when we record our amazing talent, our actors like Bradley Cooper, you know, they over-record. We get so many different lines, they ad-lib lines, we get so many great content, too much to use for the actual attraction. So they end up in our vault. So we're opening our vault to you guys because you guys rock for being here at the Galactic Premiere Party. Woo! So we're gonna play this first one for you guys. This is Rocket, if you imagine if he's riding on top of your vehicle on the gantry lift. So let's hear what he would have to say. Yeah.
Oh, my bladder! Oh, who's got a tinkle?
It's one of my favorite ones, and again, the vault never always
And by the
stays
way,
closed. We would see that in the
Steve did
future.
not write that line.
That was totally James and Bradley, and even this next one. So here's another one. So kind of mentioned a duck named Howard, played by Seth Green.
Yeah.
And this was also awesome. When they were recording Volume 2, when they were bringing Seth in to record Volume 2, we talked to Jonathan Schwartz, the executive producer. Steph and I were like, hey, can you just, you know, slip in a line, you know, just so we can have some Howard cameo in our attraction.
He just slipped in. He agreed to it.
and they came back with 20. They came back with 20, and so we sorted through all of them. We picked our favorites, but this one is a personal favorite of mine. So I wanted to play it for you here.
Let's hear it.
Oh, David Lynch, they really put a bee in your bonnet, huh? He's a provocative independent filmmaker, you know. Lord.
So that's him teasing the collector, because he teases the collector throughout the exit hall. And so that was one of the lines. We chose not to use this time, but you know, maybe, who knows? The future is always changing. Oh, and my favorite character?
Favorite character?
Cosmo, because he's cute and cuddly, like me.
Woo!
Also has a bite.
You don't have a bite. Why did you for that? I don't know.
Right, Brian? You know what I'm talking about.
Amy, let's move on from that one.
My favorite part of the attraction is actually watching people on the attraction, so the whole grabbing of the body parts. That was
Anybody
awesome.
lay hands on your neighbor?
So watching everybody, like when the doors open and people are just sitting there stunned or screaming or whatever they're doing, that's my favorite part of the attraction, is watching our guests or whoever we have riding with us, our guests, always our guests.
Right.
Yeah.
Character?
I was gonna fib and say Groot as well, but Rocket, right? Rocket.
Yeah.
Everybody knows me.
I've known you a long time. That's right. Steve.
Well, being the writer, it's a line that Drax says. Drax is such a fun character to write for. So, because he just says it like it is. So it allowed me to tweak a familiar theme park trope in where the characters all thank you at the end of the ride. And so we have Drax, after all the Guardians say thank you, say, why are you thanking them? They sat strapped to chairs while we did all the fighting. You should be thanking me, thank Drax. I just love that we got that in. It just makes me so happy. And, and to that end, I would aspire to be like Drax because I'm not, clearly. But
I don't know what you
he's
mean.
sweet, he's innocent, he's childlike, and nobody messes with him.
There you go. John Morrow.
I think my favorite part is not maybe one part, but the fact that we had six unique ride experiences. I think we tried really hard to make it a great attraction that was repeatable and would give our guests something new to see over and over and over again. And obviously there's more than you can even get in just one ride, and with 6, it certainly gives the fans a lot to try to make sure they see them all. For favorite character, I would also say, not that I'm like this character, maybe aspire to, but Star-Lord, because he's the leader of the Guardians.
Right.
I really like his human quality. He's just really relatable, and he's an eternal optimist, right? He always just thinks he can save the universe.
That's right.
And so, anyway, I don't know if I'm there yet, but that's what I like about it.
You're well on your way. And Joe.
So my favorite parts are all the parts where we ended up doing things that nobody expected us to do. All of those, right? But the quintessential one of those is when the doors close, start things rocking and the doors close, and everybody's expecting dun 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 dun.
The old ride, what the previous attraction did.
And instead you just go boom, the complete roof of the building and back down again. That is my favorite part. Now, previously you had asked which character I felt I was like. That is clearly Drax, because of the blunt declaration of obvious truths, whether they are polite or not. That's a thing.
Correct.
But the character that I think is my favorite is also the Star-Lord character, more because of Chris Pratt's role in really urging all of his fellow cast members to put so much energy. They were sandwiched between James Gunn and Chris Pratt. It was like this energy compressor machine pushing on everyone. And so, and you see that in his performance. It's a very joyful performance. What he's doing, he is so obviously having fun doing. So it's Star-Lord, but really it's Chris Pratt.
That's great. That's great. Well, before I leave you, Joe, actually, I have one more question for you. I have one last question. This is kind of an exciting time, and this new attraction is just the start. We've got a really great group of fans here. What do they have? What's next? What can we look forward to?
So you have to start one day. You have to start, right? You have to, if you're going to do something, somewhere you start. We are starting. This is the beginning of the opening of a world of things that are going to happen. And the promise of that world is embodied in this project, embodied in its quality, embodied in its fun, embodied in its unexpectedness. We promise you that the world that is coming will be as much fun as the fun that you've had or are about to have with what we have done today. But there will definitely be more, and we will be there for you, and we will always deliver a story that is something all of you can enter, enjoy, and play a role in.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, everybody, that brings us to the end of our night. Hey, you guys, are you up for a quick photo with the... Let's get out of this. Let's come on. Let's do it. All right. Anybody wants to pull out a